732 days. That's how long it's been since an official Pokemon regional. If we was to rewind to that one, we would find ourselves in Perth, Australia, and the current world champion Henry Brand taking it all home with his Mewtwo tag team deck that utilised Solgaleo GX's Soul Burst GX to flood the board with energy, allowing Henry to pick attacks from 10 other GX cards. Madness. Can always count on Henry to bring the heat with Mewtwo. However, another storyline from the event was the absolute ADP takeover, filling 6 of the top 8 spots. Keep that in mind because it's quite an accurate prediction of what's going to happen later. Fast forward back to March 2022 and we find ourselves in Brisbane, Australia. 2 years removed from IRL play. 2 new mechanics being legal at the same time, VMAX and V-Star. The official restart of Pokemon IRL play. All eyes turned to Australia looking for a good show. And they weren't disappointed. But first I have to ask you, what side are you on? Brisbane was definitely a war of 2 factions. One side was the glamorous Fusion Strike box deck, centered around Mew VMAX's Cross Fusion Strike attack, which for 2 energy allowed you to use any Fusion Strike Pokemon's attacks. The main one is Genesec's Techno Blast, which does a flat 210 damage. This doesn't sound too great, but when you factor Power Tablet stackable plus 30 damage and Choice Belts, this gets scary really fast. Genesect isn't only good for its attack, however, its ability allows you to draw up to the amount of Fusion Strike Pokemon you have in play, and it's not once per turn. Honestly, it gets a bit silly, allowing you to absolutely tear through your deck. But that's not the most show-stopping part of the deck. Meloetta is a seemingly innocent looking card, however its attack Melodious Echo when paired with Alicia Sparkle allows you to swing for 210 damage as early as turn 1, making for a deadly onslaught going second. Couple that with Oricorio for damage reduction and Psychic Leap for damage removal / prize skewing, this is one hell of a scary deck capable of destroying anything and anything in sight, including its obvious counters no less. Only one card has the chance to stand up to Mew, and it's an archetype that hasn't been properly figured out yet. Possibly until Brisbane, that is. If Mew VMAX is the glamorous frontrunners of the format, then Arceus V-Star is the gutsy, hard-working, grafting deck. Trinity Nova for 3 energy does a clear 200 damage and accelerates 3 basic energy from the deck to your V Pokemon. This opens up the door for an absolute myriad of attackers such as Moltres for Mew, Zapdos for the Mirror, and even Dhelmise VMAX. However, Duraludon VMAX was the clear front runner with its monstrous HP, shred style attack, and its skyscraper ability, which prevented all damage from Pokemon that had any special energy attached. With Mew VMAX playing mostly special energy at the time, this is a definite thorn in Mew's side. However, bench sitters being vulnerable to boss KOs was a problem. So Single Strike Mustard was introduced to sling a Duraludon VMAX straight into play, bypassing its vulnerable Duraludon B Basic V stage. But you're probably thinking, how can a reliable mustard strategy be pulled off? You have to empty your hand down to 0. And that's a fair point, honestly. But I haven't told you about Arceus' V-Star ability yet. Star Birth, which lets you search 2 cards straight from the deck with no drawback. Crazy stuff. So whatever you want, you just go ahead and grab it. Now don't get it twisted, most of the time this just grabs a double turbo energy and something to a Trinity Nova attach energies to, but Arceus' deadly combination of energy acceleration, consistency, and downright awkwardness make it one deck able to stand up to Mew. However, it wasn't just Duraludon that was being played with Arceus. Right up until the week of the event, there was a new Arceus archetype being tested. It was gaining some traction. It didn't counter Mew with Duraludon, however. It countered Mew in a different way. Arceus Inteleon ditches all other attackers and utilizes Path to the Peak and Big Charm to essentially say, your 3 prizer has 310 HP. My 2 prizer has 310 HP. Let's go. It tries to out-resource Mew and disrupt them heavily with Path to the Peak. An incredibly scary card for Mew to deal with since it shuts down Genesec's ability, stopping Mew from drawing any cards. Couple that with an increased focus on Cheren's Care to further prize deny, Arceus Inteleon was gunning for Mew VMAX hard, and going into the event, it looked like one of the best ways to counter it. So with all that being said, I'm going to ask you again, what side are you on? Mew VMAX or Arceus? Mitch from the Sableyes was on Team Arceus.
And we were really worried about Mew, because Mew's obviously such a strong deck, and we'd all kind of agreed that we didn't really want to play it. At least myself personally, I felt like I don't want to play Mew. In the end, it turns out that playing Shady Dealings, Inteleon, and Drizzle, plus the Arceus ability, being able to search out 2 cards anytime, is really consistent, and it works.
And Natalie was on Team Mew. Were there at any time any other considerations, or was it always like, you know, Mew is clearly the diff, let's just go?
Well, when we first looked at the set, it was like, wow, Mew is absurd. Like, you have Ultra Ball, you have Choice Belt, you have Double Turbo, and it's very rare that I would see a deck be just so clearly the best deck and not play it.
Natalie only had one matchup that she was scared of.
The one matchup that I was actually worried about was Gengar. Okay. Because you struggle to beat Gengar through Path because of weakness.
And keep it in mind for later. Natalie, the previous Players' Cup champion, started off on a crazy win streak.
I definitely had plot armor in day one. I wrote down my...
Sorry, that caught me off guard.
If you look at my pairings, I definitely had plot armor.
Winning her first 5 rounds against a medley of different decks such as Zacian Zam, Arceus Moltres, Shadow Rider Arceus, and the Mirror. But her special energy version proved to be tricked out well for the Mirror match.
Okay, so it started off with Kaiwan, who made top 4 with the same 60. He sent me a message like 3 weeks ago saying, what do you think of 3 Double Turbo and Mew? Brent and I want to play this. And I was a bit unsure at first because of like Duraludon and the -20. I played 2 or 3 games and was absolutely sold. It was like, it's so consistent. You can miss energy turn 1 and you don't care. You can boss so much easier. You can attack with double Meloetta very easily with the fusions because you just don't need to use them on Mew. So you just use them all on Meloetta.
But will that catch up to her? Guess we'll have to find out. She won round 7 against another Arceus Moltres deck, which allowed her to ID into top 8. Mitch's day 1 started off with him battling off against the Malamar deck. A deck which looked to take as many Okos as possible, as fast as possible by utilising Rapid Strike Tentacles. After navigating his way through Arceus Flygon, Gengar VMAX, and a couple more Mew VMAX decks, he managed to navigate the field through and find himself in top 8 also. Natalie matched a fairly new deck in top 8, one that is designed to really capitalise on her stadium count of 2. Now, talk us through your top 8 match then. What was all that about?
So, I played against the Arceus Suicune Path deck.
Suicune with a Cape of Toughness is a basic 2-prize attacking Pokemon with 260 HP. With a really good attack, Blizzard Rondo, which does 20+20 for each bench Pokemon in play. Combine that with Path to the Peak, and this is a real good 2-prize attacker against Mew VMAX.
It was a Brisbane local player who I know. He actually has a YouTube as well. I think it's Vice Games. Game 1 was just the disaster. I lost the coin flip. He had turn 1 Path. I flipped Tails on Chromatic, and I rode him for a Rose Tower to the top. So I'm thinking like, oh, chill, we're good. I draw Rose Tower. I have 0 card hand, so I play Rose Tower and draw 3 cards, and they're 3 unplayable cards, so I concede.
However, the slot saved from the raw stadium count means that she could increase her Rotom Throne count. Rotom Throne was a card that was seeing dramatically less play in Mew VMAX in the run up to the event. However, it's hard to argue with its extreme usefulness, allowing you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put one to the top and shuffle the rest back in. This acts as a really good soft answer to Path, allowing you to put one stadium to the top, allowing you to top deck it if necessary, or draw into it via your opponent's Marnie.
I'm thinking I'm cursed. So, for context, I have lost in top 8 of the previous 2 Brisbane regionals.
Okay.
And the last one, I was 602 first seed and I lost. So I was just thinking, pretty happy with top 8. Let's play it out. Okay. And so game 2 I went first and I won, so it was pretty chill there. And then game 3, so I was scared of this one. He benched Arceus, attached to it, and passed. And I just sighed because it was like, thank God, no Path. And then I burnt through half my deck, and turn 1 knocked out his Arceus with Escape Rope. And from that point, the game was just so hard for him because he had like no attacker. He didn't have Path in hand. And I had Stadium anyway for Path, so I was able to just boss Arceus, then Echoing Horn and boss it again for the knockout.
I guess there's no way Mew can dead draw 2 out of 3 times, eh? Let's see how Mitch got on in top 8. Mitch's top 8 match was against Arceus Duraludon. So here we had a showdown of the 2 at the time most successful Arceus archetypes yet. A matchup in which Mitch does have outs such as Basic Energy, Path to the Peak and Cheren's Care. And he knew it.
So I paired against Duraludon in top 8. And of the top 8 decks, Duraludon was probably the one that I wanted to see the most. Seems counterintuitive because I run Special Energy and Duraludon stops Special Energy from being used, but utilizing Triple Path and Cheren's Care twice usually win you the game, and I'm not going to lie, I went into that top 8 match really confident. I tested it the night before, played something like 3 or 4 games against it, because I'd already played it the day before, and I won all the games that I played against it, and I was feeling pretty good, so...
However, the unfortunate early game of Arceus Inteleon caught up with him, and he lost game 1.
So, going into top 8, I was 95% certain that as long as nothing went completely wrong, that I should be able to win, and, obviously, things didn't quite go as well as I'd planned, but that's okay. What ended up happening, game 1 was a bit of a brickfest from memory. I didn't get an energy attachment going second, which is really bad, so missed that, which means that I'm giving Duraludon an opportunity to set up without being able to hit into it. I can never get my Cheren's going because I'm never an attachment in front, so I can't afford to use it. I need to Melanie or I need to research to find cards, and there was just too much to ask to come back from that position. Definitely could have won if I had managed to find the energy on turn 1, but I just never found the right cards in the right order.
Game 2 went more according to plan as he ended up winning that one, putting it all down to a game 3. Win or go home.
3 was an interesting one. I opened double Arceus and managed to attach the double turbo energy, which is great. So like I'm accelerating energy and I'm putting my opponent in a position where they can't knock out the active because there's a big charm on it or whatever was happening, and I've also got a powered Arceus on the bench, so I should be able to start the Cheren loop. But the issue that I had was I didn't have an Arceus V-Star in hand, and I didn't find any Sobbles either, so I couldn't Drizzile into the Cheren, and I couldn't use Arceus V-Star to find it because I needed to then attack with another. It was just too much to ask to be able to get that setup going, whilst not leaving my hand completely dead. And against Duraludon, you do kind of need to draw through some cards to get there. So I had this opening turn which was really strong. I ended up attacking with an Arceus V-Star into an Arceus or a Duraludon or something like that, which was great. But then again, I was behind on those attachments in the late game because I couldn't get the Cheren out at the right time, and it was very difficult to kind of manipulate my prizes in the right way. I ended up hitting into 2 different Duraludons twice, plus an Arceus once, which it was just really kind of it was arduous to try and get these knockouts. In the end, I got into a position where I had 80 damage on 80 damage remaining on a Duraludon on the bench, plus a half hit on either of his other Pokemon in play, and I would have been able to win because I'd already taken 2 prizes. But I had to kind of finagle my hand and hope that my opponent missed Boss and also Big Charm, because I could double quick shooting onto the Duraludon on the bench and put it within range of another double quick shooting the next turn, in the same turn that I would half hit again, but I kind of had to retreat, and it just didn't work out. And in the end, he had the boss, so he bossed up a Pokemon and knocked me out, which was disappointing.
Unfortunately, Mitch missed the V-Star and Sobble early on, meaning his regional experience was over there. Natalie maxed another Mew VMAX counter deck. He allows Arceus Hooper Moltres deck. So you played that one again. Okay.
So
is this your only loss in day 1? Was it?
Yeah, only lost in day 1.
Okay, lost it.
Game 1, I went first, and I was able to I had Elisa Sparkle in my hand, so I just stopped drawing, because I knew he didn't play Path, and I just didn't want to draw into Fusion Energy. Then I was able to Sparkle to both Meloetta, attach, knock out his Arceus, and the game was just not close from there. I knocked out his Arceus. Next turn, he knocked out my Meloetta. Then I gusted a Sobble, I think, and knocked it out with my last Meloetta. And the issue was he can't really do much because I don't have a VMAX in play at this point. But now the issue is I'm at 2 prizes. And I had 2 Mew Vs in play. So this was one of the lines that we were discussing as a group, is the one where you don't evolve into the VMAX. So you don't put the 3 prizer in play. And I think he had the Baby Moltres plus boss, but he just couldn't do anything. Like, it was just stuck because he didn't have the 2 prizer. Then I was just able to go evolve into VMAX, Echoing Horn, boss, and take the last 2 prizes.
However, Natalie's new form Mew VMAX Special Energy build allows her to utilize Meloetta a lot more easily, even using Meloetta twice in the same game, helping to keep the prize trade as favourable as possible, demonstrating Mew's ridiculous insane power level, to be honest.
And then game 2, I almost hit the turn 1 KO. I missed the modifier, but I was able to Elisa Sparkle to both Meloetta. So next turn, I was able to go DC to Meloetta, Power Tablet, then knock out your Arceus. So at that point, I had 4 prizes left. He then promoted his Arceus because he had Trinity Nova to it and knocked out my Meloetta. Then at this point, he has 4 prizes left. I evolve into both Mews and use tablets to knock out his Arceus. So at that point, I have 2 prizes remaining, he has 4. So because of the Meloettas, he's at 4 and he has to take 2 turns to win. So he's able to get the Moltres down, but he can't fill his bench, so I just Echoing Horn and boss.
Lewis was playing Arceus Duraludon, and he was in fact the same player who knocked out Mitch in top 8. So we know we're playing against Arceus Duraludon. We know it's knocked out your friend who's playing the same 60. Does that affect your decision making on stuff beforehand, or do you think I still know how to play this?
I just play the game, like, it's nothing different.
All right, let's get involved then. So the final, talk to us about how that one went.
So game 1 was quite a disaster. I went first, so I'm thinking like, oh, got it. I have like double Power Tablet in my opening hand, so I played double Power Tablet, and I just try and draw a bunch of cards, but I miss the knockout on his Duraludon V.
Oh.
So at this point, I'm in a really bad position because I didn't have energy, so I couldn't put Fusion Energy in play to even set up for 4 Fusion next turn, so I'm unlikely to one-hit KO his Arceus, and burning the Power Tablets and not getting the knockout is so bad in that matchup. And then he attacks me, and then the next turn, I miss energy again, so it's just like...
What happened after that? Did you concede after that, or...?
Yeah, I skipped pretty quickly.
Now Natalie was only 1 loss away from dropping this round and dropping the whole event. But Mew can't dead draw twice in a row, can it? Definitely not. And with the spaces saved by playing the double turbo energy, Natalie's tech Echoing Horn came in super clutch, allowing her to KO 1 Arceus V-Star or basic, 2-shot 1 Duraludon V-Max with Max Miracle, and then use Echoing Horn to bring a basic out of the discard pile, bosses orders it into the active, and KO it again.
I go into game 3, I'm going second, and my opening hand is like pretty much perfect. I get turn 1 attack, escape rope, knock out his Arceus V, and he has Duraludon V. He just evolves into Duraludon V Max, but the situation which we realized would happen, and he just doesn't have energy on his V Max. He just benches another Arceus V, and so that's just food for my Meloetta. Exactly. Like, I had a full turn as well. All I needed was boss modifier, and I think I already had that in hand. So just draw another 15 cards, boss modifier, knockout, and at this point, like, it's pretty much just doomed for him because I didn't prize Echoing Horn, so he can't really do much. In game 3, like, there was almost no play he could have done, I think.
And that's exactly what happened for game 2 and 3, meaning Natalie secured the event. The responses on social media to Natalie's winning Mew list were absolutely insane. Everyone noticing that the 2 stadiums, whilst being a fantastic metacle for the event, is an easy way to target Mew moving forward. And with Mew taking up 4 of the top 8 slots in Brisbane, you best believe the players at Salt Lake City were prepared and ready for Mew. Could say Mew was public enemy number 1. While 43% of the day 2 decks were Mew VMAX, proving that Brisbane wasn't a fluke, there were a ton of new decks that all had Mew in their crosshairs. And let me tell you, these decks are wild. Let me run you through some of the absolute madness we saw at Salt Lake City. Straight Arceus, which we saw in Brisbane, had a couple new additions, the main ones being Bibarel, allowing you to draw up to 5 cards, providing some extra supplemental draw, and Sydney, an absolutely devastating supporter aimed at Mew VMAX, hoping to rip stadiums and special energy out of their hand. This is actually rather scary if the Mew player is currently under Path to the Peak as well. Operation Desert Storm played the Mustard Beedrill package. Beedrill actually auto KOs anything provided it's got a special energy attached. An absolutely insane attack for this meta, considering that Arceus and Mews will most likely have special energy attached. And don't forget about that Flygon sitting in the bench ready to delete anything it hits. Arceus Malamar VMAX aimed to make its opponent's day go pretty bad pretty fast via its use of Max Jammer, which does 180 damage and removes 1 trainer card from your opponent's hand. And don't forget, this does 180 damage and OHKOs a Mew VMAX, by the way. And a more refined Arceus Moltres deck that utilizes both Moltres V and Basic for Mew counters, and a Galarian Zapdos V for Arceus. Straight Gengar also saw a huge uptick in play at Salt Lake City. This deck aims to sling Path to the Peak in play as soon as possible, hit Mew VMAX for weakness, and against anything else, slap a choice band and start OHKOing. Arceus Gengar aimed to get a fresh Gengar VMAX locked and loaded into play via Trinity Nova. This is interesting because the straight Gengar version uses Houndoom to provide the energy acceleration, and while this lets you take use of single strike energy, pushing that damage slightly higher, it does mean your Gengar starts to take chip damage, and this chip damage can be extremely relevant. Gengar Arceus looks to reduce that damage cap a little bit, but completely remove the residual damage. A really interesting idea. The only other deck to make top 8 was Suicune Ludicolo, a deck that aims to take big OHKOs via dancing enthusiastically with support from Shady Dealings and Suicune V's Blizzard Rondo attack, which does 20 plus 20 for each bench Pokemon in play. Worth noting as well that Andre Cheerson made top 8 with Jolteon VMAX after a DQ for marked cards. But I'm going to ask you, did you spot it? I just ran through the top 9 decks. Did you notice what was missing? Even though there were 32 Mew VMAX in day 2, none made top 8. Drew Kennett took it all home with Gengar Arceus beating Finnegan Lynch's Suicune Ludicolo in the final.
Look at that dark energy from the discard. Tool Scrapper on the Cape of Toughness. And with that, Andrew Bennett Kennett, the law firm, wins 2022 Salt Lake City Pokemon Regional Championships TCG for the Masters Division. And what a way to...
But what caused such a violent meta shift? It couldn't be that Mew VMAX is a bad deck now, because it was the most represented deck in day 2. Was Natalie's special energy only version with only 2 stadiums just too easily counterable? Maybe. Did all the Mew mirrors in day 2 just knock out all chances of it doing well? Maybe. I think in the end, because Brisbane was the first regional in so long and players didn't have a lot of time to test for it, it was really hard to argue to play anything else other than Mew VMAX. Couple that with the insane results that Mew did have in Brisbane, the players for Salt Lake City all had ample time to test and work out how best to stop the Mew onslaught. And they got pretty creative in doing so. But this leaves me in an awkward position, because as I've recorded, I've got Liverpool this weekend and I'm playing Mew VMAX, and I don't know what to expect, but it's going to be really fun. Hit that like button, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time.